Hi, my name is Martha, and this story isn't one I ever thought I'd tell. It happened on Christmas Eve, the kind of night where snow sits heavy on the trees, lights twinkle from every window, and every car radio plays something cheerful. It should have been peaceful, but that evening, peace was the furthest thing from what I felt. My daughter, Emily, sat in the back seat, her stuffed fox tucked under one arm, eyes wide as we pulled into my mother's driveway in Waverly, Oregon, a small, quiet town where people greet each other in grocery aisles but whisper when they pass. We hadn't been back in 4 years, not since my sister Laura's wedding to Greg. There were reasons for that, reasons I pushed down, ignored, smoothed over like bad wallpaper. This year, though, Laura called, said Greg had changed, said it would mean a lot if Emily and I joined them for Christmas dinner. Just one evening, she promised. Come for the pie. I hesitated, but Emily deserved something close to family, didn't she? Now, sitting in the car, I felt like I was about to walk into a courtroom instead of my childhood home. My hands rested on the steering wheel longer than they needed to. "Smells like cookies," Emily whispered from the back seat, her breath fogging the window. That was reason enough to get out. Mom opened the door before we rang the bell. Her hug was fast, her perfume the same powdery scent I remembered. "You made it," she said with a half smile. "Greg put the lights up this year. Best ones yet." Inside, everything looked the same. Garland strung too low, mismatched chairs around a table dressed up in its best tablecloth. The air smelled like cinnamon and cloves, but the warmth didn't reach me. Laura came in from the kitchen, cheeks flushed, apron dusted in flour. She hugged Emily quickly, then gave me the kind of smile people save for neighbors they wish would move. We didn't talk about what happened the last time we spoke. We didn't talk about anything real. Greg stood by the fireplace, laughing too loud at something my cousin Ben said. He looked the same. Clean-cut, charming, the kind of man people don't question. Emily stayed close to my side. She clutched my sleeve like she used to when she was younger and shy in public. I whispered, "You're okay," and she nodded, though I could see the hesitation in her eyes. We were seated around the dinner table not long after. Greg carved the ham with the flourish of a TV chef. Grandma Margaret talked about the snowstorm in '84. My mom, Irene, passed the mashed potatoes like we were all still playing house. Emily was told to sit at the kids' table, a folding card table tucked in the corner. She walked toward it slowly, fox in hand, shoulders tight. She sat down stiffly, folding her napkin over her lap like she'd been taught. I watched her but said nothing. Dinner began. Conversations rose. Laughter echoed. Halfway through the meal, I noticed Emily shifting in her seat. Then she dropped her fork. It clattered on the tile. She bent to pick it up, paused, and turned toward me. She leaned closer, her voice barely above a breath. "Mom, it hurts when I sit, down there." The room around me blurred. Greg let out a chuckle. "Still the dramatic one, huh, Martha?" Laura gave me a look across the table. That look, the one that said, "Don't start." Mom cleared her throat. "Emily, sit up straight. That's not polite." "I need to take her to the bathroom," I said, already standing. "Martha," Mom said through a tight smile, "we're eating." "She's in pain." No one else moved. No one offered help, just silence and side glances. I took Emily's hand. Her fingers were clammy, trembling. We walked past the glowing Christmas tree, past the hallway mirror I used to dance in front of as a girl, and into the guest bathroom. I knelt down. "Sweetheart, can I take a look?" She nodded, eyes watery but brave. I helped her out of her tights and underwear. What I saw made my stomach turn. Redness, tender skin, not a rash, not an accident. I knew this. I'd seen it before, at the shelter I used to volunteer at. But this was my daughter. I blinked hard, steadied my voice. "Did someone hurt you?" She looked down. "He said it was a game. But I didn't like it. He said if I was quiet, I was good." My heart broke in two. "You didn't do anything wrong, Emily, nothing. Do you hear me? I believe you." She nodded, her stuffed fox pressed against her chest. I dressed her gently, then walked her to the guest room and tucked her in under the patchwork quilt. I whispered, "I'm right outside. Just call if you need me." She nodded again, small and silent. I stepped out onto the porch. The night air was sharp, bitter. I didn't bother with my coat. My hand shook as I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over the screen, and then I did the thing I never thought I'd have to do in my mother's house. I called 911. 911, what's your emergency? My voice cracked, but I steadied it. My daughter, she's 6. I think someone in this house has been hurting her. I looked through the window into the warm glow of the dining room. My family passed rolls, laughed, sipped cider. Inside, nothing had changed. But outside, everything had. Snow had started to fall again. Soft, slow flakes drifted under the porch light like ash. I stood barefoot on the wooden step, phone still in hand, heart hammering. Behind me, the warmth of the house glowed through lace curtains. But I didn't go back in. I couldn't. Not until help arrived. The dispatcher kept her voice steady. "Officers are en route now, ma'am. Estimated arrival time, 6 minutes. Can you confirm the address?" I gave it. Name, street, town. She asked, "Is your daughter safe right now?" I turned toward the window. The curtain was drawn in the guest room. I had tucked Emily under the covers, left her fox beside her. "She's safe," I whispered, "but she's scared, and so am I." By the time the cruiser turned onto our street, the tips of my fingers were numb from cold. I didn't notice. What I noticed was the way the tires rolled over the snow without a sound, the way the blue lights bounced against the siding like restless ghosts. 2 officers stepped out, followed by a third figure in dark red, a female EMT with a medical bag slung over her shoulder. She met my eyes, and in that moment, I nearly broke. But I didn't. Not yet. "I'm Martha Duncan," I said. "My daughter's inside, guest room, second door on the left." The EMT nodded. "Thank you. We'll be gentle." My mother flung open the front door before anyone could knock. "Did someone pass out?" she asked, eyebrows raised. "Martha, what on earth have you done?" I stepped aside. "Emily needs to be examined. She said someone hurt her. I'm not waiting to find out." Greg's voice floated from the living room. "Is this some kind of prank?" The EMT didn't answer. She walked past my mother and down the hall, soft footsteps swallowed by the carpet. The taller of the 2 officers followed her, notepad in hand. Laura appeared, barefoot and furious. Her eyes locked onto mine like knives. "You're making a scene," she hissed, jaw clenched. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" "I do," I said, "and I should have done it years ago." Greg stood up, wineglass in hand. "This is ridiculous." He smiled, a lazy, confident smile, the kind that assumed the room was already on his side. "Emily's confused," he added. "She's sensitive, prone to exaggeration, always has been." Behind me, the EMT reappeared, her face pale. "She needs a medical exam, a full one," she said quietly, almost reverently. "We're transporting her to the hospital." I nodded. Then came the question I'd been dreading. She identified someone. Everything in the room tilted, the floor, the walls, the people. "Who?" I asked. The EMT's eyes flicked over her shoulder, then back to mine. "Greg?" I didn't scream. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just stood still. Laura gasped, hand flying to her chest like it was rehearsed. "That's a lie. She's lying." Greg chuckled, but the edges of his face had turned sharp. "This is insane. She's 6. She probably misunderstood." Officer Hale stepped forward. "Mr. Callahan, I need you to remain where you are." Greg raised both palms. "You've got to be kidding me. Are you arresting me? Based on what? A kid's story?" I said, "Stay where you are." Grandma Margaret had risen from her chair. "This is our family," she said to no one in particular. "We don't handle things like this with police. This is private." I wanted to laugh. Instead, I stood between Greg and the hallway. "Private?" I said. "You think what happened to Emily is private? You think silence makes it less real?" Greg took a step forward. Just one. But it was enough for the second officer to move in. The cuffs came out, clicked around his wrists like thunder. "Turn around, sir." "What the hell?" Greg muttered, but he obeyed. "Don't touch him!" Laura shouted, grabbing at my sleeve. "You're tearing this family apart!" "No," I said, my voice low. "Greg did that." The EMT had already slipped back into the guest room and returned with Emily, bundled in a blanket, her fox cradled in her arms. Her cheeks were red from crying, but her eyes found me across the room. I walked to her, knelt down, leveled our gaze. "You did the right thing," I whispered. "You're so brave, baby. I believe you." Her bottom lip trembled. "I was scared to tell." "I know," I said, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "But you told, and now you're not alone." She nodded and clung to me for a long moment. Then the EMT lifted her gently and carried her toward the ambulance waiting outside. As they passed through the door, Greg turned his head, still cuffed. "Tell them it's not true," he said, almost pleading. "You know me, Martha. You know I'd never—" "I don't know you at all," I said. The door shut behind him. My mother stood at the threshold, arms crossed, lips thin as wire. "I'll never forgive you for this," she said coldly. "I'm not asking you to," I replied. She didn't follow me outside, didn't say goodbye. I climbed into the ambulance with Emily, sat beside her the whole way, holding her hand as we bumped down the snowy road to the children's hospital. Inside the exam room, the nurses were kind. One gave her a popsicle, even though it was freezing out. Emily stayed silent through most of it, answering questions in nods and small words. I sat in the corner, stomach churning, every breath sharp. Afterward, I called the only person I trusted with something this big, Melissa Ward, an old college friend turned family lawyer. We hadn't talked in years, but she answered on the second ring. "Martha," she said, "is everything okay?" "No," I said, "but I know what I have to do." The next morning, the hospital smelled like bleach and burnt coffee. I sat beside Emily's bed, watching the pale winter light creep in through the blinds. She was still asleep, her stuffed fox curled under her chin like a tiny bodyguard. I hadn't slept. Not a minute. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face the moment she whispered, "It hurts when I sit." I heard Greg's laugh, Laura's scream, my mother's voice like frost. "I'll never forgive you." Let her be angry, I thought. Let them all be. At 9:04 a.m., my phone rang. Melissa. She didn't waste time. "I've already filed an emergency protective order. We'll meet at the courthouse this afternoon. Bring everything you have. Notes, photos, anything Emily's said to you. And Martha, brace yourself. This isn't going to be easy." "I know," I said. "They think I made it all up." There was a pause on the line. Then she said something I hadn't realized I needed to hear. "But I believe you." At the courthouse, the air felt different. Heavy, cold, even indoors. Melissa met us in the hallway dressed in dark gray with a thick binder tucked under her arm. She knelt to Emily's level first. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm a friend of your mom's. You're very brave." Emily gave a quiet nod and clutched my hand tighter. We sat down in a small room off the main hallway, a place where witnesses wait, where truths are gathered quietly like fragile things. Melissa flipped open the binder. "Greg's already out on bail," she said. "Laura posted it. They've hired a private attorney, someone aggressive." I felt sick. He's denying everything. Says Emily's confused, possibly coached. The family's backing him. They're claiming you have a history of... She glanced down at her notes. "Emotional instability and are using Emily to punish Laura." I stared at her. "That's not just a lie, that's cruelty." Melissa nodded. "It's also typical. Abusers protect themselves by painting the truth teller as unstable." I shook my head. "I don't care what they say about me. I just want Emily safe." Melissa leaned in. Then we need to be ready, and that means gathering evidence fast. I opened my purse and pulled out Emily's drawings. The one she made on the drive back from the hospital, a red figure standing near a smaller girl, arms too long, eyes scribbled out, a shadow behind a locked door. "She drew this last night," I said. Said it was what the quiet game looked like. Melissa studied it. It's admissible, especially if the therapist supports her interpretation. She starts therapy tomorrow. Ms. Carter, the hospital, referred us. Good. Keep everything she says, every drawing, every detail, even if it seems small. Later that evening, Emily and I returned to our apartment, just the two of us. I made soup. She pushed the noodles around with her spoon. She wasn't eating much these days. "Mom?" she asked, not looking up. "Yes, baby?" "Is Aunt Laura mad at me?" I swallowed hard. "She's confused. Some people don't want to believe bad things can happen in their own family." Emily nodded slowly. "I think she thinks I'm lying." I knelt beside her. "You're not. And even if they say otherwise, you and I know the truth. And the truth matters." She looked at me then. Really looked. "Do you believe me every time?" "Every single time." That night, I lay awake listening for nightmares, but Emily slept deeply, her fox tucked close. 2 days later, an envelope showed up taped to our door. Inside, a legal document from Laura's attorney. Petition for emergency custody of Emily. I nearly dropped it. I called Melissa immediately. "She's trying to take her." "I expected this," she said. "Their angle is emotional instability, that you're fabricating the story. We'll fight it." The next morning, Laura left a voicemail. I didn't pick up, but I listened to every word. "You've always hated Greg. You've never gotten over the fact that Mom trusted me more. And now you're dragging Emily into your mess? I swear, Martha, if you don't give her back, I will ruin you." It wasn't just anger. It was entitlement. It was the voice of someone who believed her world couldn't be questioned. I didn't respond. I sent it to Melissa. That week, Emily started therapy. The counselor, Ms. Carter, had soft eyes and a way of sitting on the floor that made her seem smaller, safer. Emily spoke very little at first, just nods and a few whispered sentences. But then she drew and drew. She drew hands, a couch, a door with no handle, the fox always present. At the end of the session, Ms. Carter spoke to me privately. She's consistent, and the details match behavioral signs of trauma. We'll continue sessions, but I feel confident in what she's saying. I closed my eyes in relief. She also mentioned something new, Ms. Carter added. Another adult, a different one. My stomach turned. Who? She didn't name him, just said, "The man in the garage." I froze. In my mother's house, the garage was detached, used mostly for storage now, but I remembered something. Greg's older brother, Ronald, had been staying there off and on, a drifter, in and out of rehab, the kind of man no one left alone with kids. But no one truly watched either. I told Melissa. That could change everything, she said. If it's more than Greg, it confirms a pattern, and it means the family has hidden more than we thought. I held Emily tighter that night, even as she slept. There were more pieces to this puzzle, some we hadn't even uncovered yet. But one thing was clear. They weren't just trying to silence me now. They were trying to take her away, and I would fight with everything I had. The hearing was set for 9:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that seems to weigh on your chest. Emily wore a navy blue dress with a white collar, clutching her fox, like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Melissa met us on the courthouse steps, binder tucked under her arm, lips pressed in a firm line. "You ready?" she asked. "No," I said, "but we're here." Inside the courtroom, the wood benches were polished to a cold shine. A bailiff nodded us toward the front row. Laura was already seated on the opposite side, Greg at her side. out on bail, clean-shaven, wearing a suit that didn't quite hide the shadow in his eyes. Next to them sat their attorney, Cliff Yates, a tall man with slicked-back hair and the air of someone used to winning. Emily sat beside me, feet swinging above the floor. She didn't speak. She rarely did these days in public. When the Judge Benson, entered, the room rose. He was older, with a slow, deliberate manner that made every silence feel 10 seconds too long. He looked down at the file in front of him like it was heavier than most. "This is a temporary custody hearing," he said. "We're not determining guilt or innocence. We're here to decide where the child will be safest while ongoing investigations continue." Melissa stood first. She laid it all out. The hospital report, the therapist's notes, the drawings, the emergency 911 call. Every word she said rang like steel, calm, precise. Then came Cliff Yates. "Your Honor," he began, voice oily and smooth. "While we acknowledge the concern, we believe this is a family matter that has escalated due to unfortunate misinterpretations. Miss Duncan," he gestured toward me without looking, "has a long history of estrangement, emotional volatility, and now seeks to sever the child's bond with her extended family." He turned to Laura, then to Greg. "My clients are pillars of their community, churchgoers. Greg runs a small business. Laura volunteers at the local school." I wanted to scream, but Melissa put a hand on my wrist. "Don't interrupt." Then he pulled out the trump card. "We also have a sworn statement from Irene Duncan, Martha's own mother, asserting that Martha has struggled with paranoia, once accused a college professor of stalking without evidence, and tends to overreact emotionally." The words slammed into me like bricks. My mother. She didn't even show up in court, but she still managed to stab me through paper. Melissa stood again. "That statement was written under duress. Irene has been protecting Greg for years. There are multiple accounts of her dismissing concerns, including from teachers and neighbors." Judge Benson leaned forward. "Let's bring in the therapist." Ms. Carter, Emily's counselor, took the stand. Her voice was calm, her posture open. She spoke of Emily's consistency, the language she used, the body language, the behavioral signs, classic trauma response. She also mentioned a second individual, Ms. Carter added, a man she described as the one in the garage. Melissa stood. "Your Honor, we believe this may refer to Ronald Callahan, Greg's older brother, who has stayed on and off in the detached garage at the Duncan residence." Yates objected. "There's no formal accusation against Mr. Ronald Callahan. This is speculative." "Not anymore," Melissa said, sliding a photo across the table. "This was recovered from a social media post by Ronald, dated December 12th. That's Emily in the background, in the garage." Gasps in the room. Even Judge Benson raised his eyebrows. Laura looked at Greg. He didn't look back. Then it was my turn to speak. I stood. My legs trembled, but my voice held. "I'm not perfect," I said. "I've made mistakes. I've lost touch with parts of my family for years at a time. But I know my daughter. I've spent every hour since she was born watching her, learning her, listening." I looked at Emily, then back at the judge, and I know when she's scared. I know when she's hiding something to protect someone. I know what happened in that house. I didn't coach her. I didn't plant this idea. I just believed her. I swallowed hard, and for that, they've tried to take her from me. Silence. Then Melissa called her final witness, Tanya Briggs, the pediatric nurse from the ER. She spoke plainly. The injuries were consistent with sexual trauma. The child named Greg Callahan specifically, and gave a description of a repeated game that involved silence, reward, and touch. We recorded the statement. The audio is available if needed. Melissa turned to the judge. "We're not asking for final judgment today. We're asking for safety, for a 6-year-old girl who deserves to sleep without nightmares, who deserves to be believed." Judge Benson asked for a 15-minute recess. Outside the courtroom, Laura stormed up to me. "You just had to destroy everything," she hissed. "Everything Mom built. You couldn't stand that I had a real family, could you?" I looked her in the eye. "You built your family on silence. That's not real. That's rot." Before she could respond, Greg stepped between us. He didn't say a word, just stared. For the first time in years, I saw him clearly, not the polished mask, the shadow underneath. When court resumed, Judge Benson took his seat with the weight of a man who didn't want to do what needed doing. "I'm granting temporary sole custody to Martha Duncan," he said. Laura gasped. Greg cursed under his breath. "The child will remain in her mother's care until the criminal investigation is concluded. Additionally, I'm issuing a no-contact order against Gregory and Ronald Callahan until further notice." The gavel came down. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like air after drowning. That night, Emily and I sat on the couch. She rested her head on my lap, tracing the stitching on her fox. "Mom," she whispered, "does this mean I'm safe now?" I looked down at her, brave and small and still healing. "No, baby," I said softly. "It means you're home." The day after the hearing, Emily asked if we could go to the library. She hadn't asked for anything in weeks, so we went. She picked out 3 picture books, all about foxes, and curled into a beanbag near the children's section. She didn't speak much, but she smiled once when the fox in the story learned how to grow wings and fly away. That was enough to break me, just a little. In the quiet of the library, I wiped tears behind a shelf of cookbooks. Back home, we settled into something like a rhythm. Emily returned to school part-time. Ms. Harper, her teacher, was gentle, protective, and kept me updated by email. Emily sat near the front, drew in margins, barely spoke, but she was there. That was a victory. Melissa dropped by once a week now, always with updates, always with folders. One Tuesday morning, she came in with a manila envelope and a look I couldn't quite read. "Detective Hale called," she said, handing me a report. "They found something." The envelope held a printed transcript, part of a recovered online chat between Ronald Callahan and someone using the screen name Quiet Fox 21. The messages were time-stamped, the language was explicit, disturbing. But one line froze me. "Kid at my sister's place is easy. Parents don't ask questions." The date? 2 days before Christmas Eve. Melissa said quietly, "They're filing charges against Ronald this week, federal, possession, and distribution." My hands trembled. Did he? They don't have confirmation yet, but based on the logs and what Emily said about the garage game, it's likely. I closed the folder. "There's more than one monster," I whispered. Melissa didn't speak. She didn't need to. Emily's next therapy session brought something else unexpected. Ms. Carter met me in the hallway afterward. "She said something today that's important," she said gently. "Emily asked me if the man who hurt her had also hurt someone else." My heart clenched. Why would she ask that? She said he told her, "You're not the first." I nearly sat down on the floor. She also said Ronald gave her candy, something wrapped in gold foil. That's new. Miss Carter paused. That kind of detail doesn't come from imagination, Martha. She's remembering in layers. And we may want to consider group therapy eventually, so she knows she's not alone. I nodded, but I couldn't stop thinking about that line. You're not the first. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and stared at a blank email. To Detective Hale subject, Ronald Callahan. Possible other victims? I hesitated, then typed. Dear Detective Hale. Emily recently shared that Ronald may have made a comment implying there were other children involved. She said, "He told me I wasn't the first. Is it possible there are other victims? If there's anything I can do or if you need me to speak publicly, I'm willing." Martha Duncan, I hit send, and then I waited. 2 days later, I got a call. It wasn't from Hale. It was from a woman named Rebecca Lewis, a social worker based in Salem, 2 counties over. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time," she said. "I've been contacted by Detective Hale's team. We believe we may have identified another potential victim, one of Ronald's former neighbors, a little boy now 9. His case went cold 2 years ago." My breath caught. "And they think—" "There are behavioral similarities. The boy never disclosed details, but his mother remembers seeing Ronald near their garage more than once. He used to do odd jobs in their neighborhood." "Does she want to speak with me?" I asked. "She said she would, if you were open to it." We met at a quiet diner off the highway. Rebecca sat with us. Across the table was a woman named Jamie, her hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug. Her eyes were tired. Not just tired, eroded. "I'm sorry," she said first. "I know this is hard for you. I needed to meet someone who didn't get shut down, who didn't get told they were crazy." I nodded. "I know that feeling." Jamie told me about her son, Eli, sweet, smart, shy. One day, Eli stopped riding his bike. Then he stopped sleeping. Then came the nightmares. "He told me there was a man who gave him candy if he didn't cry," Jamie said, voice breaking. "But when I pressed him, he shut down. CPS couldn't prove anything. Ronald had already moved out by then. They dropped it." She looked at me. "But then I saw your story, the court reports, his name, and I knew." Something between us passed unspoken. The silent recognition of mothers who have walked through hell and weren't believed until it was almost too late. We exchanged numbers. Before we left, I hugged her. She clung tightly. "You're not alone anymore," I whispered. "Neither is he." Back in Waverly, Emily started sleeping better. Not always, but some nights she didn't ask to keep the light on. One morning, she walked into the kitchen with a drawing. "Is this okay to bring to Ms. Carter?" she asked. I looked at it, 2 foxes side by side, standing in the snow. "One is me," she said. "The other is someone else who was scared too. But we're okay now." I hugged her and whispered, "Yes, baby, that's more than okay." Later that week, I got another call from Melissa. "Ronald's been arrested," she said. "Possession, exploitation, multiple counts, and—" she hesitated. "He's agreed to testify." I sat down. "Testify against Greg." I blinked. "What?" "He's turning on his brother. Says Greg knew what he was doing, enabled it. Even used him to keep the girl quiet. He's claiming Greg told him to handle it." I felt sick. "And the court?" I asked. "They're reopening everything, and you'll be asked to testify again. But this time, Martha, this time, it's bigger than just one custody hearing." That night, I stood by Emily's bedroom door, watching her sleep. She looked small under the blanket, her fox beside her, hand curled into a fist on the pillow. I thought about all the people who said I was overreacting, who told me to keep quiet for the sake of family, who said the truth would destroy everything. They were wrong. The silence was the real destroyer. Truth? Truth was the first stone in rebuilding something worth living in. The courtroom was colder this time. Not because of the weather. Spring had started to push back the snow. But because of what was about to be laid bare. This wasn't about custody anymore. This was a criminal trial. The state of Oregon versus Gregory Callahan. Charges: aggravated child abuse, endangering the welfare of a minor, conspiracy. I was called as a witness on day 3. Before me, Ronald took the stand. He looked smaller than I remembered, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. Dressed in a prison-issued beige jumpsuit, he barely made eye contact with anyone. But when asked to testify, he didn't hesitate. He spoke in short, blunt sentences. "Yes, I stayed in the garage. Yes, I was alone with Emily. Yes, I did things to her." He didn't cry. He didn't beg for sympathy. He looked straight ahead when he said, "Greg knew. He told me to keep her quiet," he said. "She's starting to talk too much." Gasps echoed in the room. I closed my eyes. He continued, Greg told me if she told anyone, the whole family would fall apart. He made it sound like it was my job to keep it contained. The prosecution played part of the chat log again, the line about easy access, the sick familiarity in Ronald's typed words. When cross-examined, Ronald stayed calm. He didn't shift blame. He said simply, "I was a coward." But Greg was worse. He used me like a tool. Then it was my turn. I stepped up to the stand, my heart loud in my ears. I'd practiced with Melissa a dozen times, but nothing prepares you for the moment you speak your daughter's truth in front of strangers, while her abuser sits 10 feet away. The prosecutor asked simple, structured questions. What did Emily say that night? What did I observe? How did I respond? I told them everything. The chair, the bathroom, the doctor's words, the way Emily's voice got smaller when she spoke of quiet games. Then came the defense. Cliff Yates stood, slow and steady, his smile tight. "Miss Duncan," he began, "you've been estranged from your family for years, correct?" "Yes," I answered. "Would you say you hold resentment toward your sister Laura?" "I hold grief," I replied. "Resentment fades. Grief lingers." He blinked at that, thrown. "You accused Greg before this incident, didn't you? Years ago. At the wedding, when he caught Emily during a fall and you pulled her away?" "I didn't accuse him," I said. "I felt uncomfortable, and I listened to that feeling." He leaned in slightly. "So this is a pattern for you, then? Seeing threats where none exist?" I met his gaze. "No," I said quietly. "The pattern was people telling me to shut up. This time, I didn't." Someone in the audience let out a breath. Whether from anger or relief, I wasn't sure. After I stepped down, the final witness took the stand. Emily. She wasn't supposed to. We had agreed she wouldn't be called unless absolutely necessary. But the judge approved a closed session with the jury, counselors present, and Melissa at her side. I watched from a monitor in another room, gripping the edge of a padded chair. Emily entered with her fox in one arm. Ms. Carter held her hand. She looked so small against the wooden chair, but when asked her name, she answered clearly. "My name is Emily Duncan. I'm 6 3/4." She was asked if she knew Greg. She nodded. "Did Greg ever make you feel unsafe?" A pause, then a whisper. "Yes." The prosecutor asked, "Do you remember what he told you when he played the quiet game?" Emily looked at her fox, then straight ahead. "He said if I didn't tell, he wouldn't make the others go away." The room stilled. "Which others?" the prosecutor asked gently. Emily glanced down. "My cousins, my grandma. He said if I talked, they'd leave me forever." Afterward, I held her outside in the hallway. "You were brave," I whispered. "You did something most grown-ups can't." Emily pulled back just enough to whisper, "Do they believe me?" "Yes," I said, tears in my voice. "They do." The trial lasted 6 more days. Greg never testified. His attorney called no character witnesses. My mother didn't show. Laura did, but was escorted out after a heated outburst during Ronald's second testimony. In closing, the prosecutor said something I'll never forget. Truth doesn't tremble. People do. But the truth, especially from a child, will always wait to be heard. When the verdict came, Emily and I weren't in the courtroom. We were at home, coloring. The call came from Melissa. "Guilty," she said, "all charges." I exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. "He's not getting out for a very long time, Martha. Neither is Ronald." Emily looked up from her fox drawing. "Was that the lawyer?" "Yes, baby." "Did we win?" I paused. "No," I said. "We were just heard." That night, she slept without the light on, and for the first time since Christmas Eve, so did I. Spring came slowly to Waverly that year. The snow melted in streaks, the sidewalks dried in patches, tulips pushed through frost-bitten earth as if unsure they were allowed to bloom, and Emily laughed again. The first time, it happened in the backyard. I was hanging laundry on the line when I heard it. Light, sudden, unmistakable. I turned and found her spinning in the grass, arms out, fox tucked under one arm. It was the kind of laugh that comes from the belly, not forced, not polite. A laugh born from sunshine and wind and the freedom of not being afraid. I dropped the bedsheet and just watched her. By early May, we'd moved out of our apartment and into a rental house on the edge of town. Small, wooden, with peeling shutters and a screen door that always slammed. But it had a fenced yard, a lilac bush by the porch, and no memories trapped in its walls. Emily picked her own room, painted the walls soft yellow, asked if she could put up fairy lights around the window. She called it the safe place. I didn't correct her. One Saturday, I found a letter in the mailbox. No return address. Inside, my mother's handwriting. It wasn't long, 3 sentences. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I believe her now, and I'm sorry it took so long. I stood on the porch and stared at it until the ink blurred. Then I folded it, tucked it in the kitchen drawer, and left it there. Maybe one day I'd write back. But not yet. Miss Carter, Emily's therapist, suggested a weekend retreat for families affected by trauma. Not formal, not heavy, she said, just nature, animals, and people who've lived through the hard parts. We went. Emily fed goats. She painted a ceramic fox. She made a bracelet out of string and beads and gave it to a little boy named Eli, who I recognized immediately. His mother, Jamie, gave me a knowing smile. At night, around a campfire, we sat in a circle. No one was asked to speak, but people did. A father who lost custody and got it back. A grandmother raising her son's child after the system failed him. A woman who said nothing for 10 minutes, then whispered, "He went to prison, but I still lock the door when I sleep." When it came to me, I simply said, I believed her. That was enough. On Emily's 7th birthday, she asked for 2 things, strawberry cake and a story. What kind of story? I asked. One where the little girl wins. I blinked. I think I know one. So that night, we curled on the couch with the fox between us, and I told her, once there was a little girl who lived in a quiet town, and something terrible happened to her. But she told the truth, and even though people didn't believe her at first, she kept telling it, and her mom listened, and her mom fought, and they got through the storm together. Emily's voice was soft. Did the little girl get scared again? Sometimes, I said, but not forever. And what happened to the people who didn't believe her? They had to learn the hard way. She nodded. And the little girl? She asked. She grew up strong and kind, and she knew, more than anything, that no matter what, her voice mattered. Emily looked up at me. You know, she said, you could write that in a book. For kids like me? I smiled. Maybe I will. She grinned. You could call it The Girl and the Fox. I kissed the top of her head. I'd read that. On the first day of summer, she asked if she could walk to the corner store with Jamie and Eli, just 4 blocks. I hesitated, then nodded. She turned at the gate, waving, and called, Mom, I'm coming back, don't worry. I did worry, of course I did. But I also smiled, because healing doesn't come all at once. It comes in steps, in a laugh on a breezy day, in a story told out loud, in a child walking 4 blocks toward a new life. Some endings don't happen all at once. Sometimes they arrive slowly, like spring, but they still come. And the beautiful thing? You get to write the rest. This wasn't a story about revenge. It was a story about believing, even when no one else would. About protecting a child, not with noise, but with presence. If you've ever felt dismissed, doubted, or pushed aside, let Martha's journey remind you, you don't need a courtroom to stand for truth. You don't need approval to be the safe place someone runs to. And love, the kind that heals, doesn't demand to be seen. It just stays. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. And always remember, Your belief in someone might be the reason they survive. And your quiet love? It's louder than you think.